Hi there. Thanks for stopping by. My name is Rhonda Erickson. I work for the South Dakota Benefit Specialist Network. What we do as benefit specialists is we help people understand their Social Security disability benefits, the SSI and SSDI. We also help people understand how work will affect their benefits. We also help people with different issues that can arise, whether it's an overpayment or because their check stopped. Unfortunately, those things happen, so we can help people with that. We help people understand their Medicaid and Medicare. We also help people understand how work will affect other benefits or programs that they are utilizing. But then we give people information about programs or benefits that they didn't even know existed, like the Medicare Savings Program, the waiver programs, MAUD, which I will review briefly today, and ABLE accounts, which I will go over in detail. There are 6 benefits specialists in South Dakota. 5 of us, Michelle, Bonnie, Tara, myself, and Brad. We work specifically with VR clients or recent VR clients. If somebody isn't working with VR, then Barry, who is located in Rapid City, will work with those individuals. Today, I am going to review 4 different topics. I'm going to talk about the different benefits that children can receive. I am also going to talk about the age 18 redetermination process for those youth that are currently getting SSI. I'm going to go over MAUD, medical assistance for workers with disabilities, and then I'll end with a lot of detail about ABLE accounts. So let's get started. So children can receive a couple different types of benefits. If a parent is drawing disability, if the parent is drawing retirement, or if the parent has passed away, any child under the age of 18 can get a benefit from Social Security if that parent had a work history and had worked throughout their lifetime. Now, this check that child gets is not based on disability at all. It is strictly because a parent is drawing Social Security or they passed away. This benefit stops when the person turns 18, graduates from high school, or turns 19. Social Security is going to do a lot of different things to decide when they're going to stop that check, but it stops at 18. So if a child happens to have a disability and they are receiving the child benefit, they're not going to keep on getting it because they have a disability, because that benefit is not tied to disability at all. So that child should apply for disability benefits if they think that they can't work and they're going to need that benefit to live. So there are children who receive this type of Social Security benefit, not based on disability. Any child under the age of 18 can get this. Now, if a child has a disability, they might be getting SSI, different than the child benefit, that's Social Security, but there are some children who receive SSI. The child must have a disability that affects their day-to-day, that presents limitations. If a child applies for SSI because they have a disability, parents' income and assets can determine whether or not that child is going to get any SSI each month, or if they actually need it. So there are some children that have a significant or severe disability, but they're not eligible for SSI because parents' income and assets are too high. So Social Security says that child doesn't need it right now. Another thing that can affect whether or not a child gets SSI is a Social Security child benefit or child support. So a lot of different things will affect whether or not a child is eligible for SSI, even if they have a disability. Now, I already said that parents' income can affect whether or not a child gets SSI, but if they do get it, then if that child starts working, both their income and parents' income will affect how much that check is or whether or not they get a check. Now, with SSI of any kind, the type of income that it is very important because it can affect that check differently. So if a child is getting SSI and their income from a job decreases that check to zero, then the child keeps their Medicaid coverage that goes with that SSI if the child's income is the reason why it goes to zero. But if parents' income is the reason why that child doesn't get a check for that month, then the child does not keep the Medicaid. Parents' income is considered deemed income, and that's different. And it's not from the child's own money that causes it to go to zero. So deemed income that takes a check to zero doesn't allow the child to keep that Medicaid, but that child might or would probably qualify for CHIP. That income limit for that program is much higher than the SSI. Now, if that child is a full-time student, if they're regularly attending school, then they can ask Social Security to apply the student earned income exclusion. When somebody is a full-time student, Social Security can exclude up to $1,900 a month in income, and it won't decrease that check at all. If a child is receiving SSI, the parent, if they're working, must submit pay stubs to Social Security each month. And if the child starts working, they have to submit pay stubs each month to Social Security. Now, in addition to parents and child's income affecting that SSI check, resources is also something that Social Security looks at to determine eligibility for that SSI for the child. So when a child is getting SSI, they exclude $2,000 in resources if it's a single parent and $3,000 if it's a couple. They also exclude $2,000 for the child. So if it is a family, a two-parent family and a child, Social Security will exclude $5,000 where it does not affect that eligibility for the SSI. Anything more than that will affect eligibility. Now, Social Security excludes one car, one house. Now, if it's a two-parent household, it's hard to get by on one car. They only exclude one car, one house. But then other things that are considered a resource would be any and all bank accounts, a retirement account, life insurance policies, savings bonds, land, cattle, any of those things can be a resource. And one thing that Social Security does look at is they care if somebody gives assets away. Let's say that the parents own land, and that land is a resource and will affect that eligibility for the child to get the SSI. So let's say that the parents take their name off of that land and put it in a brother or parent's, grandparent's name. Social Security considers them giving that away, and that will affect their eligibility for SSI for 5 years. They're going to still consider it a resource for 5 years. So SSI is a needs-based program, so they literally look at everything to decide, number one, does the person need it? And then number two, how much? And then they're going to continually look at all of these things every year to decide whether or not that child gets the SSI check. Now, if a child is getting SSI and they're under the age of 18, then not all children will qualify to get it as an adult. The adult criteria to get SSI is much, much tougher. They don't just have to have limitations, they have to have a severe impairment. So approximately 50% of the children who get SSI are not going to meet the adult criteria. It's much, much tougher. So for example, if a child has ADHD and some behavioral issues, the ADHD and behavioral issues probably won't qualify them for adult benefits. It's not severe enough. Now, if a child is getting SSI, Social Security is going to automatically do that age 18 redetermination within a year of that child's 18th birthday. They might not do it right away, but they're going to do it eventually. And once that child turns 18, once they get the adult benefit, then no matter where that child is living, even if they're still living with their parents, Social Security doesn't look at parents' income and resources to determine eligibility. So if a child didn't qualify for SSI because of parents' income when they were under the age of 18, when that child turns 18, then Social Security won't look at parents' income and resources anymore. They're just going to look at that child's medical condition or disability, and if it's severe enough, and then the child's income and resources to determine eligibility. So that's why you hear of a lot of people who apply for Social Security once their child turns 18, because then parents' income and resources are not looked at. Now, as I said, 50% of those children don't meet the adult criteria. If a child is in that situation, they go through the age 18 redetermination, and Social Security says their condition is not severe enough, they don't medically qualify. That child can use what's called a Section 301 work incentive. What this does is, if somebody doesn't meet the continuing disability review or the age 18 redetermination, that child or young adult can ask Social Security to continue to let them draw SSI until they reach their employment goal. So if that student is working with Voc Rehab, has assigned their ticket to work to Voc Rehab, has a pass, which that's a whole, I could do an entire training on pass, has an IEP through the school, is in a transitional school, then they can request the 301 status that allows them to keep on getting SSI and Medicaid until they reach their goal. So this is just a temporary extension to that SSI if they don't meet the adult criteria. So if you know of anybody in this situation, please have them get in touch with me, and I can help to walk them through what this is and how to go about asking for it. Okay, so if somebody gets SSI as an adult, as I said, Social Security only looks at that person's income and assets to determine eligibility. If somebody is working, that person has to submit their pay stub information, whether it be by mail or by a phone app or by a Social Security account. They have to submit their pay stubs each month, so Social Security can decide how much does the person get each month. Now, a lot of times you'll hear people talk about the fact that there's an earning limit or amount. Now, there is an earning limit or an amount for somebody who gets SSDI, which is different than SSI. So that's not the rule for SSI. For SSI, Social Security just wants to know how much are you earning each month from your job. Let's plug it into a formula to decide now how much do you need. And they're going to do that every month. The check is going to be adjusted. But there is no earning limit for somebody who gets SSI. If somebody is working so much that the calculation identifies that they don't need a check for that 1 month because their income is high enough, then they just don't get the check, but they keep their Medicaid and they don't lose that tie to SSI. And again, if that young person is a full-time student, whether it's in a trade school or college, or they're still in high school, they can ask Social Security to apply the student earned income exclusion. They have to be a full-time student though, or be considered to be regularly attending school. Now, unfortunately, transitional students are not always considered full-time students or regularly attending. for a couple different reasons. Because the student earned income exclusion is for college students or somebody up to grade 12, the transitional schools are in between. And also because those transitional programs don't always teach the traditional high school classes. It's not algebra, geography. It is, cooking, budgeting, different things like that. They don't always consider them full-time students, but you should always submit that information and ask them to look at it. But when an adult is getting SSI, then just their income and resources affect how much their check is or whether or not they get it. Okay, so that was a brief overview of the different benefits that a child can get. Now, next, I'm going to go over medical assistance for workers with disabilities. This is a Medicaid program here in South Dakota for people who have a disability but who are working. So there are 4 criteria for this program. The person must have a significant disability. This program, MAUD, uses the same disability determination process or medical criteria in order to determine whether or not somebody qualifies. So it's a really difficult process. If somebody was denied Social Security, they probably won't qualify for MAUD. Not that they won't, it's 2 different programs using the same system, but they might not qualify. The person has to have a significant disability. And the person has to be working. You can work 1 day a week or make up to $5,451 per month in income. So you can have a lot of income and still qualify for this program. There's an unearned income limit for this program. Unearned income is money that somebody didn't work for. So that is an SSDI check, a veterans benefit, alimony check, child support, any of those things, unearned income, unemployment check. If somebody has more than 814 in unearned income, they're not going to qualify for this program. They can work a lot and have a lot of income from a job, over $5,000 a month, but unearned income is very low. They can't have more than 814. And then with this program, this Medicaid program, the resource limit is higher. For any other Medicaid program, the resource limit is $2,000. For MAUD, it's $8,000. It's quite a bit more. This program, MAUD, it is essentially for those people that have a significant disability but are still working full-time. And so the MAUD program is a good situation for somebody who is working full-time or can support themselves on income alone. They don't need any other money to help them to pay for their basic expenses. If somebody wants to apply for MAUD, they must apply for Social Security. And if somebody does want to work a lot, work full-time, they'll want to apply for disability when they're earning more than $1,310 per month so that they are denied. Another good MAUD candidate is somebody who is getting Social Security disability benefits right now, but is intending on working off of the benefits. Once that SSDI check stops, that's when they then are eligible for MAUD if they have resources less than $8,000. So all of these people are really good MAUD candidates. People who are not a MAUD candidate is somebody who has a short-term condition or injury. DSS sometimes sends people down to talk to me about MAUD because they broke their leg and they're going to have a severe leg injury and they're going to be off work for 9-10 months. In order to meet the disability criteria, the person has to have a disability that's going to last for 12 months or longer or result in death. So that person who has a broken leg or a hip replacement is not going to qualify for MAUD. Another person who is not a good candidate for MAUD is somebody who cannot or who is not working. You have to be working when you apply and you have to continue to work to keep it. Another person who is not a good mod candidate is somebody who can't support themselves from income alone. Let's say it's somebody who is working 10 to 15 hours a week. They actually should apply for disability benefits because if they can't support themselves on income alone, they should be applying for disability. Somebody who can't work, who thinks, you know what, I don't think I'm going to be able to work, then they're not a good mod candidate. Or somebody whose condition is not severe enough. So if somebody, again, has ADHD and anxiety, they're probably not going to qualify for a mod. Now, I'm not qualified to make that determination. Anybody can apply, but the chances of them qualifying are very slim. Okay, lastly, we are going to talk about ABLE accounts. I think this is one of the most exciting things that I'm talking about today. ABLE accounts were passed into legislation in 2014. And this is the actual verbiage of the law, that these accounts are mirrored after the 529 college savings accounts, but they're very different because they are for people who have disabilities and they are for disability related expenses, which we'll get into more detail in this presentation. So an ABLE account is a very specific financial institution, and any money in these ABLE accounts are excluded when deciding eligibility for Medicaid, SSI, and any other means tested programs. So all of these states in blue have an ABLE account available to its residents. And as you can see, South Dakota is not blue, it is green. South Dakota doesn't really do anything until somebody makes them, and nobody's made us set up an ABLE account program for our residents, but that is okay. There are 41 different ABLE accounts throughout the United States, and 27 of those allow South Dakota residents to participate. So there's 27 to choose from. And that is a lot for some people. People tend to want to research all 27 of those in detail before they make a choice. And that's okay if you want to research all of them, but don't put off opening an ABLE account because you want to research all of those. That can take you a while. Because all 27 of those ABLE accounts are good. None of them are bad. They're all good. Plus, if you open up an ABLE account in, let's say, Nebraska, but then 6 months from now, you find that you like the Minnesota ABLE account better, you can roll money from one ABLE account to another at no charge in most cases. I think there's one state, Alabama, that charges $50 for that rollover. But all of these 27 ABLE accounts available to South Dakota residents are good. None of them are bad. Because all of these ABLE accounts have the same 10 basic characteristics. All of them are the same in these 10 ways, and we're going to go through those quick. In order to open up an ABLE account, a person had to have had their disability before the age of 26. So, for example, if somebody is 46 now, if they had their disability before the age of 26 or were born with their disability, they can open up an account. They just have to prove that they had their disability before the age of 26. People can enroll in any state ABLE program as long as they're allowing out-of-state residents to participate. People can put $15,000 into an ABLE account each year. People can put an additional $12,760 a year into that ABLE account. If they're working, they can put an additional $12,000 of their money from employment into an ABLE account if they're working. Anybody can put money into that account. The person can put their extra Social Security benefit into that account, their extra money from a job. An aunt or uncle can deposit money into the ABLE account, grandma and grandpa, parents, anybody can literally put money into that ABLE account. And I just like to use an example. When I say anybody can, I mean anybody. So for example, if somebody is getting SSI or Medicaid, And if their employer is offering a 401k, a 401k is always a resource. And if that SSI or Medicaid recipient has a 401k, it can affect their eligibility. And nobody who gets SSI or Medicaid should ever participate in a 401k. But that person could go to that employer, explain the situation, and say, you could put that 401 contribution into my ABLE account instead of a traditional 401k. The employer could put money into that ABLE account. Now, you can't make an employer do anything, but you certainly can ask. So literally anybody can put money into that ABLE account. People can have one account at a time, just one, but these are a big deal. One is huge. ABLE accounts are a big deal. Now, when the person has an ABLE account, they have access to that account. They are the account holder. A guardian can also be a co-signer on that account, but the person does have access. And sometimes that scares parents, or that scares different community support provider organizations, because they think, well, they're not ready to handle money yet. And so we can't have an ABLE account because they might misuse it. And we'll talk about a little bit about what happens if somebody uses it for something that they're not supposed to. But what I would encourage people to do is to sit down with the person and help them to manage that money. Just because they don't fully understand money yet doesn't mean that they shouldn't look at an ABLE account. This is a place where people can put money for emergencies. This is their safety net. And so if somebody is having trouble with that $2,000 resource amount, they absolutely should look at an ABLE account. When somebody has an ABLE account, the distributions from those ABLE accounts, the money that somebody uses from the ABLE accounts is not considered income. And of course, the money in it is not a resource. And people can have up to $500,000 in that account, depending on which state ABLE account that you pick. Now, some state ABLE account limits are $300,000, but some are $450,000. New York, for example, is $100,000. So that's one of the differences that there are between the different states. But you can have up to $500,000 into those ABLE accounts. And the money in those ABLE accounts can be used for disability-related expenses. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So those 10 things that I listed are the same no matter which ABLE account that you pick. So all of them are good, none of them are bad. But there are some differences depending on which state that you pick. So each of them have yearly fees in order to have that account open. And they're very low, anywhere between $40 and $70 a year as far as the yearly fee. All of them have investment options or mutual funds. All of them do. And there are fees associated with that as well. But not everybody wants or is interested in those investment options. So some do have just regular checking and savings accounts. And so if somebody doesn't want to mess with those mutual funds, they should find one that has a checking and savings account. And I have heard from people that if it doesn't have a checking or savings, just the investment options, then withdrawing that money is just a little harder, because I guess that is kind of considered to be a long-term investment, and they want somebody who is investing in the different mutual funds, wants it to grow money. So if somebody is looking at using that account on a regular basis in the near future, I would suggest a checking and savings account option. Some have debit cards, some don't, and some have a monthly fee associated with that debit card, and some don't. Some have a prepaid cash card that people can use. Some have checks, paper checks that are available for that account holder. The account limits are different. I just kind of went over that. There are a few that have an expense tracking tool. So the person can identify what they're using that money for, and that is really handy if somebody is getting SSI. I would suggest that for somebody who is getting the SSI benefit. And there's one that has a GoFundMe site where anybody could, literally anybody, even if they don't know, you can put money into that account. So those are where some of the different, where the differences are with each of those different accounts. And this is what somebody should look at depending on what your interests are. So what is a qualified disability related expense? And this is the actual definition, but really it's anything that is spent on the person. The person has to use that ABLE money for themselves, just themselves, nobody else. And it has to help them to achieve a better life. So that is a really broad list of items. And this is just a small portion of what that person can use that money for. They can use it for school. They can use it to pay their rent, their mortgage. If they do use an ABLE account to buy a house, they can use it for the down payment, and they can use it then to pay the mortgage each month. They can use it for transportation. They can use it for a down payment for a car. After they purchase the car, they can use that ABLE account money for the monthly loan payment. They can use it for gas. They can use it for insurance. They can use it to just buy basic household expenditures. And the ABLE account money can be used to pay end-of-life expenses. So somebody, of course, they can have a prepaid burial account, but the money in the ABLE account can be used to pay the person's end-of-life expenses if they happen to pass away. So earlier I said that some parents are worried about opening up an ABLE account because their son or daughter, the person who has the disability, is the account owner and does have access to that. And that is a legitimate concern for a lot of parents or a lot of community support organizations for people that don't have a full understanding of money. But if that person uses the ABLE money for something that they shouldn't, these are the three agencies that are going to care about that and what will happen. So if a person uses that ABLE money for something that they shouldn't, they take money and buy their friend a new Xbox. It's not for them. It's not allowable. They could use it to buy themselves an Xbox, but not their friend. So let's say they do that. The IRS, if they ever audit them, will apply a 10% penalty on however much that item was. So if it's $500, $50. That's the worst case scenario. That will be the repercussions of using that money for something that they shouldn't from the IRS. If the person gets SSI, Social Security will ask that person for receipts and detail of what they spent that ABLE money on each year during the yearly reviews, which is why the expense tracking tool is such a nice feature for somebody who is getting SSI. But if the person uses that ABLE money for something that they shouldn't, something that's not a qualified disability related expense, then Social Security is going to consider that item or the amount of money that was spent on that non-qualified item as income for the person for that month. So same example, that $500 Xbox that the person bought for their friend is going to be $500 of income for that person for that 1 month that they purchased it. So that's the worst case scenario for somebody getting SSI. Now DSS, who oversees Medicaid, so if the person is getting just Medicaid, no SSI, and if they use that ABLE money for something that they shouldn't, DSS is actually never going to ask them what they spend that money on. DSS only wants to know that that account is a qualified ABLE account. That's it. Proof that it's one of these 27 specific financial institutions that have the ABLE accounts. That's it. So these three organizations are the people that are going to ask for ABLE account information periodically. And if somebody uses that money for something that they shouldn't, it's not the end of the world. So do not put off opening one or exclude that as an option for somebody if you think that they might not know how to handle that money correctly. This is the worst case scenario. So sometimes I have people that ask me this question, and I don't like this question, but it does come up. People will say, well, oh, isn't this just a way for people to take advantage of the system and to get, have all this money and still get SSI and Medicaid? I like to tell them that the ABLE account is for the person to achieve a better life experience during their lifetime. That money is for them. That's their safety net. And the purpose of the ABLE account is for them to use it during their lifetime. The purpose of the ABLE account is not to hoard money away for their family members or their offspring if they have children. Plus, most of these ABLE accounts have a Medicaid payback provision. It's like an irrevocable trust. When the ABLE account owner passes away, the money in the account can be used to pay off their end of life expenses, but Medicaid can ask for the money in that ABLE account to be reimbursed to them for the amount of Medicaid that they used from the time that they started or opened up the ABLE account. So that money could go back to the state if the person had Medicaid, and if the state puts in a claim for that account. So that ABLE money isn't something for a family member. It's not a place for people to hoard money for family members. It's for that person to use while they're living. Now, I've had this question a lot, and it's a really good question. Well, if I have a special needs trust, so I don't need an ABLE account. And that's not necessarily the case. People can have a special needs trust and an ABLE account both. Both of these places, special needs trust and an ABLE account, are where money is excluded when determining eligibility for SSI and Medicaid, but they're very different. A special needs trust is something that somebody should set up if they are going to get an inheritance. If their parents or their grandparents want to include them in an inheritance of land or money, they should look at a special needs trust. Because if you remember, ABLE accounts, you can only put $15,000 into the ABLE account each year. If somebody gets an inheritance of $100,000, they can put $15,000 of it into the ABLE account, but they still have $85,000 hanging out there. They need a place for that, special needs trust. Now, a special needs trust is something that a lawyer has to set up, and it's going to cost at least $2,000 or more. And you want to have that set up before the inheritance comes, ideally. If somebody has a special needs trust, somebody else has to manage that money for them. The beneficiary, the SSI, the person with a disability can't have access to that account. And there are specific things, very specific things that they can use that special needs trust money for. They can't use it for basic, rent, food, any of those things. They're very specific. Whereas the ABLE accounts, you can set one up with as little as $25. You can open up an ABLE account. The person has access to it. And that is because parents lobbied to have this legislation passed so that their children could have access to that money after they're gone. Because right now, a lot of parents are their adult child safety net if there is an emergency that comes up. So the ABLE account, the person does have access to that. And the things that people can use the ABLE account money for are much more broad, they can use it for literally anything as long as it's spent on them. And then anybody can put money into the ABLE account, anybody. The special needs trust, it's very specific money. So let's say somebody has a special needs trust that's set up for an inheritance. If the person has an extra $2,000 that they want to put somewhere because they are worried about their Medicaid and that they have too much money or are over the resource limit, they can't just put their money into the special needs trust is very specific money. Able account, anybody can put money into it. So those are some of the differences, and people can have both. So if somebody has a special needs trust, they should absolutely look at an ABLE account as well. So the ABLE National Resource Center, they are the experts on ABLE accounts. I do know a lot about ABLE accounts. I'm interested in them. I tell as many people as I can about ABLE accounts. I encourage people who have SSI or Medicaid to open one if they are getting close to that $2,000 resource amount. But I don't know everything about the ABLE accounts, and I don't actually help people to open them or to make a choice on which state that they should pick, because that's really a financial decision at that point. Once you're ready to open one, it's a financial decision. You should never take financial advice from me. But the ABLE National Resource Center has basic information all the way down to each state detail and what that ABLE account offers. And once you're ready to open one, you literally click on that state and click on the website and start opening one. It takes 30 to 45 minutes according to the different people that I've spoken to. So ablenrc.org is where you want to go, ABLE National Resource Center. And I can answer a lot of basic, or I can answer basic questions for sure, all the way down to some details. And then I direct people to this website. And that concludes all of the information that I am going over today. I will try to go to the beginning so that you can see my contact information. Contact me if you have any questions. If you're not in the Sioux Falls area, contact me anyway. I can direct you to the benefit specialist in your area. But if I cannot answer your question, maybe it's something that is not my area of expertise, I probably will know who you should contact and who you should get a hold of to answer your question. Thank you for stopping by. Enjoy the rest of your conference, and please call if you have any questions. Thank you.